Good afternoon, friends. Good morning. Good day. Today is Thursday, August 6th, so I'm a day late, but a good thing in this case because it gives us the opportunity today to reflect on the Feast of the Transfiguration, which we celebrate on August 6th. Rich feast and which we can only touch on, but has some great opportunities for reflection. In any case, let's listen to the gospel reading from St. Matthew's Gospel about the Transfiguration. Jesus took Peter, James, and his brother John and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became white as light. And behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, conversing with him. Then Peter said to Jesus in reply, "Lord, it is good that we are here. If you wish, I will make 3 tents here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." While he was still speaking, behold, a bright cloud cast a shadow over them. Then from the cloud came a voice that said, "This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him." When the disciples heard this, they fell prostrate and were very much afraid. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, "Rise and do not be afraid." And when the disciples raised their eyes, they saw no one else but Jesus alone. As they were coming down from the mountain, Jesus charged them, "Do not tell the vision to anyone until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." This feast always reminds me of I don't know if it was a saint, whatever missal we had as children, St. Joseph's Missal or something. It's with a lot of color pictures. But this image of the Transfiguration was among the most brilliant. This beautiful light emanating from Jesus. In any case, you've all seen images of it. I've talked before about this concept of thin places. The Irish ancients write about these places among the cliffs and the islands where heaven and earth seem to meet. You can almost see an image of that in some misty, foggy cliff off of the rocky coast of Ireland. Those places where that almost that ability to reach out to heaven minimizes or reduces the distance between this world and the other. Places where one can encounter God. So in the gospel we hear, Jesus often went up on the mountain, right? Which would suggest that was a thin place for him and for his disciples to somehow be touched by God. But what this gospel shows us is that Jesus himself is that thin place. I mean, because of the incarnation, he becomes that bridge, that living, breathing, talking, laughing, crying, eating, meeting place between God and us. What we have inherited as Christians is the belief that because of our baptism, we too somehow are charged to be thin places for others. That is, someone in whom another can meet Jesus. That we have a spark of the divinity in us. Pope Francis, I recall, said a lovely thing in doing a catechesis for parents who were celebrating the baptism of their infants at St. Peter's, and he said how fortunate you are to bring home now this little bundle of divinity, this little packet of divine presence and grace and holiness. Easy perhaps for us to see a beautiful infant as a child. Easy for us to recognize the spark of divinity in a cute little baby. Perhaps less easy to acknowledge that own spark of divinity in us. One of my all-time favorite books, and I don't know who said it, but trying to come up with like the title of your favorite book is just folly, because of course it depends when you read it, what's going on in your life when you read it, where you read it, all of that. That factors in. But I read this book, If You Want to Write, by Brenda Yulin, at a very important time in my life. And indeed I was writing, and so it was an inspiration there. But the subtitle is A Book About Art, Independence, and Spirit. It's about much more than just writing, but it's about accessing, if you will, what she calls that one's true center. And we'll talk more about that, but first of all, a word about Brenda Yulin. She was a Minneapolis resident, born at the turn of the century in the late 1800s. Kind of a local icon, a local legend, a bohemian writer, would often hobnob with all the great bohemian writers from New York and those hanging around Greenwich Village and all of that, but quite a personality who, one telling fact about her was that she received an international swimming record for over 80-year-olds and was knighted by the King of Norway. She died at the age of 93 in 1985. But in any case, If You Want to Write, by Brenda Yulin. But I found it to be a very spiritual book, because she says, for example, I'm going to look it up here so I get the whole quote. She says, "Don't think of yourself as an intestinal tract and tangle of nerves in the skull that will not work unless you drink coffee." She says, think of yourself as an incandescent power, illuminated perhaps and forever talked to by God and his messengers. Remember how wonderful you are. What a miracle! Exclamation point. There's one chapter in here, the title of which is the first chapter. Everybody is talented, original, and has something important to say. It's about encouraging writers and artists, but it's really an encouragement for all of us in terms of accessing that center which holds this incandescent power. Try to discover, she says, your true, honest, untheoretical self. And as a writer, as if you are writing from there. This is what caught me about this book today, because she uses the word transfiguration. How often do you see that in any other writing? But she says, yes, when you get down to the true self and speak from that, there is always a metamorphosis in your writing, a transfiguration. So when you get down to your true self and speak from that, if we could expand on that, when you get down to your true self and act from that, as a Christian, when we act from that spark of divinity in us, when we act from the presence and the life and the spirit of Jesus Christ who dwells in us, imagine who we can be, who we are. What a miracle, Yulin would say. She says we must try to find our true conscience, our true self, the very center. For this is the only first-rate, choice-making center. Here lies all originality, talent, honor, truthfulness, courage, and cheerfulness. Here only lies the ability to choose the good and the grand, the true and the beautiful. There's so much there to unpack. Even her word throwing in cheerfulness, we can perhaps understand here lies all originality and talent, our true self, but really our cheerfulness. When we are able to access that which is at our depths, the spark of divinity, our true conscience, our true self, the very center. The church has something very clear to say about this true center as well, this place of conscience. In a classic text from the Second Vatican Council, the Pastoral Constitution on the Church and the World, Gaudium et Spes, joy and hope, that's translated. And I just want to read that because it dovetails with what Yulin is saying in other words. But listen to what the bishops teach in the Second Vatican Council. And the language here, I apologize for, is very male, and I'm not going to try to change all those. I will try to change some of them, but there's a lot of man and men, but you get it. In the depths of his conscience, in the depths of our conscience, we detect a law which we do not impose upon ourselves, but which hold us to obedience, always summoning us to love good and avoid evil. The voice of conscience, when necessary, speaks to our heart. Do this, shun that. For man has in his heart, we have in our heart, a law written by God. To obey it It is to obey it is the very dignity of man. To obey it is the very heart of human dignity, the voice of conscience. According to it, according to that, we will be judged. Conscience is our most secret core and sanctuary. There we are alone with God, whose voice echoes in our depths. In a wonderful manner, conscience reveals that law which is fulfilled by love of God and neighbor. In fidelity to conscience, Christians are joined with the rest of humanity in the search for truth. That's a great concept which we can't pursue here, but that we meet the rest of humanity on that level where we're all seeking truth. And for the genuine solution to the numerous problems which arise in the life of individuals from social relationships. So just to extract from that, with regard to our, racial equity conversation that we're having in society these days, what does our conscience say? What do we experience in our very depths? What is being dictated to us in our very depths? Not a lot of head work, but if we do heart work and soul work on it, what are we hearing? How are we being directed? Hence, the more right conscience holds sway. Let me say that again. Hence, the more right conscience holds sway, the more persons and groups turn aside from blind choice and strive to be guided by the objective norms of morality. So rather than just acting willy-nilly, if we're really paying attention to our heart and soul, to what Brenda Yulin would call to our true center, our true self, how would we act? How do we act? So this may seem to be a little off course. Well, it's not from the Feast of the Transfiguration, but it's this. It takes me back to that picture of Jesus in my children's missal, of this illumination within. It sounds a little New Agey, I know, but it's thoroughly Christian to believe that we carry within us the very spark of God, God's creation, and certainly that creative spark redeemed in us by Jesus Christ, given to us by the Holy Spirit. We're celebrating confirmation of our young people for the next 3 Saturdays here at Ascension. Dividing groups so they can be socially distanced in the church and all that. But that's what we're celebrating, right? That the spirit within them, the spark of divinity which they hold, celebrating it, lifting it up, raising it up, so that they and we with them can be more conscious about living out of that true center, that light. We're called, having been transfigured by the resurrection of Jesus Christ and by the gift of the Spirit, we're called to help transfigure the world, right? So you get it. Some reflections on the Transfiguration today. A lovely prayer which I'd love to close with, which is a prayer of the Transfiguration. Let's go up the mountain. Let's go up to the place where the land meets the sky, where the earth touches the heavens, to the place of meeting, to the place of mists, to the place of voices and conversations, to the place of listening. O God, we open our eyes and we see Jesus, the months of ministry transfigured to a beam of light, the light of the world, your light. May your light shine upon us. We open our eyes and we see Moses and Elijah, your word restoring us, showing us the way, telling a story, your story, his story, our story. May your words speak to us. We open our eyes and we see mist, the cloud of your presence, which assures us of all we do not know, and that we do not need to fear that, Teach us to trust. We open our eyes and we see Peter's constructions, his best plans, our missing the point, our missing the way. Forgive our foolishness and sin. We open our eyes and we see Jesus, not casting us off, but leading us down, leading us out to ministry, to people. Your love endures forever. We open our ears and we hear your voice. This is my beloved Son. Listen to him. And we give you thanks. Amen. Thank you all. Happy Feast of the Transfiguration to you.